Greetings, Guzzlers. We're baking again. Now, this is going to be a bit ambitious. Okay, I've never attempted something like this before. Well, I have in a way. If you remember, a while back I made some sushi, and it was panda-faced sushi. So combining different elements of the sushi, if you like, to resemble a panda's face. Well, I follow quite a few people on YouTube. It's where I get some of my recipes from. And this one is from a lady, a chef, dietitian, food scientist, all of those things, called Anne Reardon, who actually has recently published a book. But I've seen some of her recipes. I haven't actually tried any of hers yet, but this is her first one. So this is her recipe I'm following, okay? And it's going to be some themed, if you like, cookies or biscuits as we call them in England, okay? They're going to have a base within the cookie. So the first thing we need to do is make some dough, and then we're going to split the dough up into several different portions because we're going to colour it. Now, because of how we're going to have to handle the dough, we're going to be putting it in the freezer for about 20-30 minutes so it stiffens up a bit so that we can manipulate it, but you'll see as we go. So this might be a mitigated disaster. Who knows? So let's get the ingredients sorted. So in my bowl here, actually it's a little bit stiff still, we'll have to see how we get on. Might need to just soften it a little bit more. We want some softened unsalted butter, 340 grams. Now we're going to be adding 6 egg yolks, some vanilla extract, pinch of salt, 20 grams of corn flour. We've got some icing sugar here, 310 grams, and we'll be wanting 600 grams of plain flour. Okay, that's all going to go to make the dough up. And then really all we're left with is our colouring and some sprinkles to go on at the end. So the first thing I'm going to do is, like we would do normally with anything like this, I'm going to get the hand whisk onto that butter and cream it all up. So that's got the butter nice and light and creamy. So the next thing we're going to do is going to just put into it that icing sugar. Now, like the usual when we're doing this stage, like in a buttercream, I'm not going to shove the whisk into that. Perhaps if I'd done it in the stand mixer with the guard on it, I might have done. But what we're going to do, I'm just going to get that mixed in lightly first, and then we'll get the whisk onto it to make sure it's all nicely combined together before we start adding some of the other ingredients. Okay, so that's the butter and icing sugar. Okay. So in a second we'll move to the next bit. So that's the icing sugar all mixed in, and now what I'm going to do is I'm just going to give it a generous pinch of salt. We're going to add at this stage the vanilla extract, 2 teaspoons of that. 1, 2. I've not tried this vanilla extract before. It's a lot runnier than the other. We'll see how we go. And then I've got 6 egg yolks. Just give that a little bit of a scrape out, get that all in there. And then once we've got these all combined, that's when we then add the flour, like I say, plain flour, and we've got some corn flour there. But before we do that, I'm just going to get this mixed together. So now we're going to tip in that flour and the corn flour, and then again all I'm going to do is I'm just going to give that a bit of a gentle mix together before we get the whisk into it, because obviously there's a lot in this bowl and that flour's apt to go everywhere, as it did when I poured it in. So just going to get this all combined together to make our dough, and then we'll be ready to start splitting it into these different quantities that we're going to colour. So here we go. I've got the dough all mixed up. It's quite a stiff dough, which is good because we're modelling with it essentially. Okay. Now I've got 4 separate little bowls here, but they're going to be ones that can be coloured, and then the rest of the dough will be left in here as plain dough. So first off, I want to do some yellow. So I'm going to take about 3 tablespoons of the dough into that bowl. Okay. And then I'm going to put, how much is in it? 5 in the next. That's going to be black. So that first one's going to be yellow. Second one is 5 tablespoons of black. Then the next one is 8 tablespoons, and that's going to be a dark pink. And then I'm going to have 16 tablespoons in the final bowl, and that will also be a pink, but that's going to be a pale pink. Okay, so that's the quantities, so I'm just going to get measuring them out. So I've got my yellow, I've got my black. I took an awful lot of black, and I would say that's not even black really, but that's the best it gets after a while. A dark pink and the light pink. Now, this is where if you've got one, you want a fondant extractor, and put it with quite a wideish circle on it. Okay, and the first thing we're going to do is we're going to make a yellow snake. So we're just going to load up. All I've got here is some baking paper, which is what we're going to do it on. I've just got an old tin. It's only simply because we're going to then put it in the freezer to chill it down and stiffen it up. And that was the only thing that fitted into my freezer, to be honest. So what I'm going to now do is I'm just going to fill up my fondant extruder. Now you can use, if you haven't got a fondant extruder, you can use a piping bag with like a large-ish round nozzle. Okay, but I'm just going to get this filled, or you can actually get a piping bag, fill it with this, cut the end off, and use that to squeeze it down into here. Okay, so I'm just going to get that filled, and then I'll show you what we're going to do with it. So what we're going to do is we are going to create a long string of yellow dough. Okay, like I say, you could do this with a piping bag. And essentially this will be the length of your whole cookie thing before we slice it up. Okay, so I'm going to just, since I've got plenty of yellow here, we actually only want one, but I'm just going to create, while I'm at it, a couple of spares till I run out of dough, and at least that way, see that one just split, probably because there was an air bubble in there. Okay, so I might as well just use this dough up, get some strips, like I say, I only want one. And then I'm going to repeat it with the black. Now with the black, we want 2 strips. Okay, again, I'll do some extras. Okay, and then we're going to put that into the freezer. So there's my prepared black and yellow snakes. They're now going in the freezer. I just need to clean up the fondant extruder because we're going to be putting the pink in there next. So I've filled it now with deep pink, and I'm going to do it. We only want 1 snake, but I'm going to do just a few extras, just on this, you know, so we've got some spares. So just like before, we're just going to extrude that dark pink, and then we're going to use the remainder of the dark pink to roll out between some baking sheets. Okay, so I think I might just do one more, and then we'll get rolling. Okay, so that's dark pink done. Get that chilling down. So I've rolled it out and I've sliced it roughly in half. One's a bit wide than the other, but that one's going to be too wide anyway. And now I've filled up extruder with some plain dough. And what I'm going to do is I'm just going to put a snake of this down this dark pink. And then what we're going to do is we're going to fold as best we can this up, which is what I might do, because I'm just going to lift that strip up a little bit, which was a bad idea. I'll have to re-roll that. And what we're going to try and do is essentially roll up that white, that plain dough, in that dark pink colour. So I'm just going to get that out of the way, because it's going to be easier to gradually pinch that up. Now it doesn't have to fully encase it, okay, because this is going to be one of the sides of the bow. So we can gently roll it, try not to squash it too much. Okay, and that's the first one side of the bow done. Now that, when we've got the other done, just needs a little bit more rolling. When we've got the other one done, they will also go in the freezer. Okay, it's getting a bit warm in here. The dough's getting quite soft. Okay, I might transfer that as best I can, I think, before I do the other one, because otherwise that's going to break. So I'm just going to repeat the process, roll out some dark pink, put a strip of plain dough down it, roll it like that. So what I've got here is a lump of the plain dough. Okay, and what we're going to do is we're going to roll that out into a flat sheet. But we want to keep this fairly thick, because we're going to cut the main segments, if you like, of our cookie from it. So you can see that, well, I don't know if you can see that, but it's quite thick. Now I just want a straight edge. Now we're going to be doing quite a bit of rolling and re-rolling of this. Okay, take our cookie cutter, that's the size they're going to be, and all I'm going to do is I'm going to cut a small semi-circle or whatever. That's about a quarter. So I'm just going to go along that straight edge like that. And what we're going to do is we're going to remove these, and I want to just stack them. Doesn't matter if they're slightly uneven, right? Because obviously when we come to the final thing, we are going to be rolling it. Okay, so all we're doing at this stage is picking these up, and we're going to make a semicircle, well, not a semicircle, we're going to make a length that's about equivalent to the length of our strings, if you like, that we've been creating. Right, so I'm just going to go along and I'm creating, and now this is going to end up being on the top of the cookie, although you won't know what's bits top and what bits bottom, but we're just going to get that done. When we've got that length done, again, it's going to go in the freezer because we want it firm up, because we're going to want to better pick it up. So there's that semicircular length, if you like, before we put that in the freezer. And now the dough is getting very, very soft because it gets so warm. So if this starts getting too much of a problem handling it, then chill it down and then bring it out so it's a bit firmer. But what we're going to do now is I'm going to take another batch of that, roll it about the same thickness, and in this time, instead of just doing that top bit, we're now going to do the bigger bit, if you like. So when we put the two together, we will have essentially the full circle. So there you have the two sections, if you like. And like I say, they're now going to go into the freezer, and we need to get them in there for about 30 minutes so they're nice and hard, and we can then start putting the whole thing together. So here we go, here's my big semicircular bit, if you like. And I'm just going to squash that together a little bit, and then we're going to turn it so the flat side's upwards. And this is where we now want to take one of these black strips. And so what I'm going to do is I'm going to carefully lift up one of them strips, and we're going to lay it along the length of that, slightly to one side. So if that's my semicircle, I'm going to have one there and one there. I'll show you once perhaps when I've got this on here. So these are going to form, let's move this over here a bit. These are going to form the two eyes. Now, I'm just going to put this back in the freezer while I just prepare what we're going to put through the middle. I need to get some more of my plain. We're just going to put a thin strip down the middle, and then we're going to be using the yellow. So I've just flattened out a piece of plain dough, and I'm just going to lay that between the two eye strips, if you like. Okay, I just need to get a little bit more just to go up the end here. So that's padded out that gap between there, and now all we're going to do next, let me just get rid of some of these scraps which we're not going to want. What we're going to do next is get the yellow strip, and I'm going to lay that on top of that plain strip I've just put in there, so it sits up in the middle but proud of that bit. So I'm now back to the freezer. So I take one of my best looking yellow bits, and I'm just going to lay that, like I say, along the middle of that bit. And now all we're going to do now is we're going to take some of our plain dough, and we just essentially want to pad out either side of that yellow strip. So we're just building it up so that I can then take that semicircular bit there, and that will lay on top of this lot. So it doesn't matter how rough and ready it looks, because remember, we're going to be squashing this together slightly. Okay, we're trying not to overly squash it out of shape. Like I say, it is quite warm in here, and this dough then starts getting very soft. So I think we're just about padded that out. So now we take this strip and we lay that on top. point I want to clear the area, because what we're now going to do is we're just going to roll this together, slightly squeezing it so it sticks together. And then when I'm happy with that, that is now going to go in the freezer where we want it to firm right up. I'm going to also obviously return these to the freezer. Now remember, I did extra black and extra yellow, which we won't be needing. I need one of them dark pink strips and those two rolled lighter pink strips with the plain dough in the centre. That's all that's left to go on this, but we can't actually add that at this stage until this dough is set hard enough, because we're going to dig a little trough, if you like, a little indent, which we're going to sit some of this into. So I'm trying to let this warm up a little bit, because that makes it a little bit more pliable, so that we can then just make sure it's all stuck together. I might just fill in some of these gaps with a little bit of plain dough. It'll act like a little bit of glue, and then we can, like I say, shove it back into that freezer, firm it all up. Whoops. See, it's that bit on those big bits that was really sort of quite cold. So here's our raw solid sausage, if you like, but we're just going to work out which way round that's going. Okay, we want to make sure that we've got it with the main semicircular bit on the bottom. If you can see the end, the yellow nose, okay, I don't know, that's not right, is it? We want it that way with the nose down, sorry. Getting a bit confused here. And what we're going to do is, using our fondant roller extruder, I'm going to gouge above the right hand eye. I'm just going to go along and gouge out as you can see there, a tunnel, if you like. I'm just going to work my way from that end. Now, I'm going to have to rescue some of this dough that's in here, because unfortunately we have run out of plain dough, and ideally we want to finish the plain dough off a little bit. But before we get there, we're going to start assembling the bow. So, if you remember, we've got a red or a pink strip, dark pink strip, and these lighter pink, I think they are, with the yellow in the centre. First thing we're going to do is we're going to take one of our lighter pink, or dark pink, sorry, the single one anyways, and we're just going to press that lightly down into that indent. Okay, and then I'm going to take the wrapped one, and I'm going to press that into that top of that gap, and then I'm going to press this one I'm just going to lower that indent a little bit, and then we're going to press that one down into that bit. And I'm just going to break off these ends. So there you go. Now we've got our bow as such, or it will be our bow formed. Remember, these were spares, we don't need them. Now what we really want to do now is create some ears, but at this stage, like I said, I haven't got any plain dough left, so I'm just going to get that out of there, and we'll see if we've got enough just to roll 2 long strips to act as the ears. I've managed to roll a strip which I'll put along the top of that bow, and now I'm just going to roll this bit, and I'm going to lay that along that edge, basically under the bottom or by the side of that bow. Okay, part of the bow there. So I'll get that done, and then we're pretty close to finishing off. Remember, we've still got one lot of coloured dough to use yet. So there's all that lighter pink dough. I've had that in the fridge just to keep it a little bit warmer, so I just might need it to warm up a little bit. And what we want to do is roll this out, and we want to get it into a strip of, you know, a flat, wide enough strip that we can wrap it almost all the entire way round. Okay, we want to go round to the ears, if you like, either side. Look. Yeah. So, whoop, we're going to attempt to roll this into a long enough strip, and obviously wide enough, and there should be some pink left over to enable us to fill in the gap along the top. So now, obviously with all the freezing that's been going on, we're nowhere near baking yet. We're still nowhere near baking, so I haven't put the oven on yet. We've got to get this wrapped, and then before we cut it into our cookies, we can't do that when it's this soft. So again, it's going in the freezer for another half hour. So I think we may just about be there. It's a little bit thinner. So I lift this up, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to lay that by that edge, and now I'm using a paper, I'm going to roll that round don't quite neat. That doesn't matter. I'll trim that, and then using this spare dough, now just going to put some in that gap between the 2 ears, and then we're going to fill in around it. So that we've covered the entire tube, if you like. In pink, and then we're going to roll it, and we want to gently squeeze it all together. Okay, don't want to squash it too much because it will squash the features. But now that is going to go into the oven, into the freezer, Now, just going to try and squeeze these together. Yeah. Actually, forgotten one important step before we freeze it. So I'm just going to unwrap that. What we're going to do now is we're going to cover it in sprinkles. So what I'm going to do, I'm going to lay them sprinkles there. And then we're just going to roll it. Cover the whole thing. In the sprinkles. It's a little bit thinner here, it's not wanting to stick on this bit, but and what I'm now going to do, I'm going to roll it up and we're going to put it in the freezer for 30 minutes so that we've got it nice and hard, well, hard-ish, so we can then slice the cookies. Now, when we bring it out, that's the point when we're going to be wanting to put the oven on. Okay, the oven will go on at 180, and obviously we want some baking mats to lay these on, and then we'll be baking them for 20 minutes-ish, but we just need to keep our eye on it because we don't want them going brown. But anyway, that's going in the freezer. So here we go. What we're now going to do is we're now just going to I'm going to do it on this side. Just going to slice it. Now obviously this is an end bit, but you can just about make out the features on that little yellow nose. Okay, so I'm going to put that one on there to bake, even though obviously it's not quite right, but we can use that one as a taster. So I'm just cutting thin slices. There's a little bit of a gap I noticed around the bow, and like I said, these will go in the oven 180. Okay, for about 15-20 minutes, but we just keep our eye on it. We want them to bake, but we don't want them to go brown. See why they call these things hundreds and thousands? There's hundreds and thousands bloody everywhere. So, they don't have any whiskers on them yet. But we're going to bake these, and then when they cool completely, we'll get some tempered chocolate and we'll draw on some whiskers. So that was the end bit. So just trying it out. Just a plain vanilla sort of biscuit. A bit of crunch from the sprinkles on it. Some of them got a little bit brown in the oven. And remember, I didn't have quite enough plain dough to build up the ears, so the ears haven't quite worked. What I've got in here is some chocolate. I've just melted, tempered a bit. And what we're going to do, I'm just going to use that to put Oops. Some little whiskers on each one. And there we have the finished article. A little Hello Kitty cookie. Bit distorted. But quite a complicated method. Far more difficult than doing that than it was doing that sushi, I'll tell you. But there you go. Courtesy of How to Cook That and Reardon. Hello Kitty cookies.